Hi everyone, we've got our 9.5 video 1 today, and this one's all about the quadratic formula, which is something you may or may not have seen before. It's going to be a formula that you've got to memorize, so we'll be working on that, but it's something that every year students are freaked out that they have to memorize it, and then every year every single one can do it. Okay, so it's not too bad. But we've so far solved quadratic equations in 3 ways. We've done factoring, we've done graphing, and we've done them using square roots. So our 4th method that we're going to learn is called, like we said, the quadratic formula. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what the quadratic formula is. So anytime we have an equation, and we kind of called this the standard form where it was ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So it's got to be equal to 0, and we're going to have that x squared term, possibly a bx term, possibly a constant term. Okay, if that's the form of the equation, then we can find the solutions, right? If we're trying to find the solutions, that would be x equals. So we can find the solutions using the formula x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's the quadratic formula, right? Notice how I say all over. That fraction bar goes across the whole thing. So it's everything on top divided by 2a. Let's point out something that hopefully looks familiar. B squared minus 4ac. Remember, that's the discriminant? So that's actually going to be how we're going to start all these problems, is with b squared minus 4ac. So I think most of you already have that memorized pretty much. So then it's really not that much. It's negative b plus or minus square root of the discriminant all over 2a. So it won't be too bad to memorize this. So let's do a couple example problems, like what does it look like when we use this? Okay. So example 1 here, and I've got the formula up on the top. Good idea to always write that down. Example 1 is x squared plus 2x minus 2 equals 0. Okay. So as we finish up this chapter, one of the things we're going to be doing is looking at a problem and deciding what is the best way to solve it. Factoring, quadratic formula, graphing, square roots. This one we can't solve with square roots. Anytime there's both x squared and x, you cannot solve it with square roots. So that's out. We could try to factor it if we wanted. This one won't factor. Graphing, if you had your calculator, you could graph it and solve it. We're going to focus right now on how to solve it using the quadratic formula. So the way we're going to start all these problems, if you're using the quadratic formula, is first by coming up with our a equals, b equals, and c equals. What are the coefficients of each of these? So ABC, remember it's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So we're equal to 0, so that's good. So I can say that a equals 1, because remember it's 1x squared. So a equals 1, b equals 2, and c equals negative 2. You never write x for a, b, and c. So then what I'm going to do is off to the side, just like we did on the first day of this chapter, is b squared minus 4ac. I'm going to calculate the discriminant. Okay, and this will tell me if there's no solution. It'll also tell me if this factors. Okay, and then if it doesn't, I can easily plug this into the quadratic formula. So when I do that, remember we do b squared in our heads is 4 minus 4, and then you're going to do AC in your heads, negative 2. So that equals 4 plus 8, which is 12. Okay, so the discriminant is 12. Remember, positive means 2 solutions. Okay, and it's not a perfect square. 12 is not a perfect square, so this one will not factor. So we're going to go right into the quadratic formula. We're going to say x equals, and you're going to make a big fraction right away, negative b. Well, b is 2, so I'm going to do negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, it's the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. I already calculated that. That's 12. So I'm going to do square root of 12 all over 2 times a. You do that in your head. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay. So I didn't even really need that big of a fraction. Now we have to simplify this, and this is maybe the harder part. Okay, the first thing we'll do is we'll say x equals negative 2 plus or minus. I'm going to simplify the square root of 12 to be, and you can do some side work, square root of 12 is square root of 4 times 3, which is 2 root 3. So it's plus or minus 2 root 3, and that's all divided by 2. Now, we're going to look at all the like numbers, okay? The like numbers, you know, if we go back to Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the other. So if I'm looking in this answer here, I've got 2, 2, 2, and square root of 3. The square root of 3 is different, not because it's not a 2, but it's different because it's a square root number. But all the non-square root numbers I can divide by 2, and I'm going to do that. So I'm going to divide everything by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, and I get x equals negative 1 plus or minus root 3 divided by 1. And then you never have to write divided by 1, so I'm going to stick with negative 1 plus or minus root 3 as my final answer. Because those are not like terms, negative 1 and root 3, I can't actually add them together. So that's where I end. Those are my answers. All right, let's try another. This one will go faster. X squared minus 4x equals 45. I got to get it to equal 0 first, so I'm going to subtract 45 from both sides. And we get x squared minus 4x minus 45 equals 0. So then we're going to find a, b, and c. A is 1, b is negative 4, c is negative 45. From there, I do my discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, which equals b squared is positive 16 minus 4 times, and then I do ac, that would be negative 45, because it's negative 45 times 1. So this is going to be 16 plus, and you could use a calculator here if you wanted to, but that's going to be 180. And that is 196. So it's positive, which means 2 solutions. It's also a perfect square, so that means if we wanted to, we could solve this by factoring, and we'll actually do that at the end here just to check our answer. Right, but right now we're going to do this quadratic formula. So I'm going to go x equals negative b, well, negative 4 is positive 4, plus or minus square root of the discriminant is 196, all over 2 times 1, which is just 2. I just used my quadratic formula here and plugged in. So then we got x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 196 is 14 divided by 2. Right, and this is what we practiced the other day. We can split this up to get my 2 answers. I have 4 plus 14, which is 18 divided by 2. So that this is my plus branch. So my answer there is 9. And then my minus branch here, 4 minus 14 would be negative 10 divided by 2, which is negative 5. Those are my 2 answers. We could solve this by factoring. So that's what I'm going to do up here, just in blue. Because if we tried to factor that, we'd get x and x. I would get minus 9 and plus 5. And so I'd get, if you remember, x minus 9 equals 0, x plus 5 equals 0. So we'd get x equals 9 and x equals negative 5. Hey, look, same answers. Okay, so this is a problem where ultimately you can pick which method you like better, factoring or quadratic formula. One more. 4x squared equals 8x plus 1. Let's get it equal to 0. If you want to try this on your own, you could pause the video and do that. I'm going to work through it though. Okay, so we can do a equals 4, b equals negative 8, and c equals negative 1. That gives me b squared minus 4ac, which equals 64 minus 4 times ac would be negative 4. So that's going to be 64 plus 16, which is 80. One solution, or 2 solutions. okay? But not a perfect square. So let's go to our formula here. X equals opposite of b, or negative b, which is 8, plus or minus the square root of 80, all over 2 times 4, which is 8. Lots of 8s. So simplify the square root first. Square root of 80 would be, so if you're good at 80, it's 16 times 5. Otherwise, you would do 4 times 20, but then you'd have to break down 20 also. So we've got 16 times 5, which is 4 root 5. So I get x equals 8 plus or minus 4 root 5 over 8. And then, once again, look at all your outside numbers. 8, 8, and 4. I can divide all those by 4. Divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. So I get a final answer of 2 plus or minus root 5 over 2. Okay? There's our final answer. You cannot, because not all 3 outside numbers divide by 2, we can't reduce these 2 here. Alright, that is all for today. We'll do a lot of practice with these over the next couple of days. Thanks for watching.